Dear friends of the MCI, dear students, dear alumni, dear faculty, dear stakeholders of the MCI, dear new semester students, freshmen, and also I want to express a very, very warm welcome to all of you. Great to have you today on screen, have you taking part in our online live talk with a distinguished personality who I will introduce a bit later on. But let me also express a warm welcome to our distinguished partner university, a very prestigious partner university in Germany. It is the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management who is partnering in this event, and also we have been a long-standing partner and enjoying this partnership very much. Now, before we involve our distinguished guest, I would like to give you some technical details and to give you indications how this will work. Our distinguished guest of today and I will do a live talk, an online live talk, and you also may be involved, you out there, wherever you may be now. You also may send us questions, comments, but questions you want to be answered by our guest. And the email address is livetalk@mci.edu, livetalk@mci.edu. We have been receiving a number of questions already in advance, but feel free and invited to send us questions spontaneously if they may arise. But now, you can see her already. She sits in Moscow now. There it is 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And we're very, very warm welcome to Ms. Ksenia Yudaeva, who is the first Deputy Director of the Bank of Russia, or in other words, the Central Bank of Russia. Great to have you on screen. Great to have you with us, dear Ksenia. A very warm welcome to you.
Well, thank you. And it's a big honor for me to participate in your program as well.
Thank you very, very much again for being here. And let me also, because not all of you will perhaps have the opportunity to be part for the entire period of time, which is roughly an hour from now. Let me give you a little preview to upcoming guests. The next one will be next Friday, so not tomorrow, but the Friday next week, Friday the 9th October at lunchtime. In presence in a face-to-face format on campus, and he is the chief executive of Hofer, a retail company, a very, very large or actually global retail company, who will be talking on what the heck does the consumer want? So consumer behavior in the retail business. And then on October the 21st, we will be happy to welcome here in a digital format the German Federal Minister of Education and Research, Anya Kalicek, and then please go on, feel free to visit our website with other distinguished guests who will be visiting us. But now, Ksenia Yudaeva has been waiting long that she can start, and I would like to address her with the first question. I mean, she has been having a very, very impressive career, a very impressive career track so far, with all distinguished brands in her vita. And just to mention a few of them, she graduated from Lomonosov Moscow State University. I do not say the year now. Then she graduated from the new economic school, got a PhD from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, did study courses at the Stockholm Institute of Transition Economics, was a senior researcher at the Central Economic and Mathematical Institute under the Academy of Science in Moscow, became leading researcher and director of the Economic Policy Research, the Center for Economic and Financial Research in Moscow, and so on. And then, just to keep it short, became a senior advisor to the president and chief economist to the director of the Sberbank in Moscow. And now from 2013 on, she has been with the Bank of Russia as the first deputy governor. And she was reappointed in 2018. She got awards, a number of them. Just to give an example, the Order of Honor and Commendation of the President of the Russian Federation. So, Ksenia, we are more than impressed, and I think it's not just me, but also the audience out there. Now, but Ksenia, if I may just really jump into our little discussion or our little format, what does it mean to be the first deputy governor of the Bank of Russia? What kind of position and duties are involved?
Well, thank you for the question. First of all, let me say a few words about Bank of Russia. Because the Central Bank of Russia is not just a central bank. Central bank is an institution which does monetary policy. Recently, particularly after 2008-2009 crisis, we of course all think that central banks should do financial stability as well. But not all the central banks also regulate financial sector. Those who regulate, they usually regulate just banking sector, not the rest of the financial sector. The Central Bank of Russia is an exception. We actually regulate not only banks, but all other types of financial institutions, and we also regulate markets. So we are both central bank and sort of mega regulators, which has its positive and negative. And positive thing is that being a person at the bank who is responsible for financial stability issues, that is myself, I understand that it is much easier right, to implement policy which have effects on financial stability if you have all other regulators inside the bank, inside the same institution, rather than outside of the institution. So you need to do lots of negotiations and you need to try to coordinate with other institutions your policies. Well, of course, even inside, you know, I'm deputy governor. There is a number of other deputy governors who are responsible for their functions. So we have to negotiate with ourselves, but still, since we are within the same institution, it's much easier. So going back to my responsibility, so as I said, my main responsibility is financial stability, which is mostly analysis and recommendations for policies which are often implemented, not always, but often implemented by other parts of the bank. I'm also a board member, so I'm taking very active part in monetary policy decision as well. And I used to be responsible for monetary policy as well. Now we have a separate person, but I'm still deeply involved into that. I'm supervising research, data and statistics, international, so a number of other more kind of supporting functions within the bank as well. So this is roughly my areas of responsibility.
Mm-hmm. And if I want to better understand, or the audience wants to better understand the structure of the Bank of Russia, who do you report to, you directly?
No, I report to the governor.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's like the chairman, governor. Like our Mrs. Lagarde is Elvira Nabiulina, you know, and actually they are quite good friends.
Mm-hmm. That helps a lot once in a while, huh?
Yes, Christine and Elvira, they know each other quite well, already from some of the previous times. So, and then we have deputies. We do not have, you know, some central banks have external board members. We only have internal board members.
Okay.
So we have deputies responsible for monetary policy, financial stability, financial development, banking supervision regulation, non-banking supervision and regulation. So this is more or less how it's divided and what kind of areas. And under every deputy governor, there is a number of departments. Which he or she supervises. For instance, I have 6 departments under my supervision. And also we have a very diverse presence in the Russian regions. Russia is a very large country.
A bit larger than Austria, yeah.
Yes, so we have a large representation in the regions, and our offices in the regions, they used to do mainly, well, first of all, we still do currency distribution. That's an important function of our central bank, but they also used to do a lot of banking sector supervision. They participated in some of the monetary policy operations. Now, and that was to some extent my initiative as well, we also develop economic research in the regions. We would like to know more about what's going on in the regions. So we established and strengthened economic units in the regions, and we try to develop research in the regions.
Now, developing the regions of Russia and being so diverse and having, you know, these different functions within one corporation, although separated tasks, what would you see is the most relevant bottlenecks you are facing now in your position? I mean, in your duties to fulfill the duties. Or for the Bank of Russia itself? What is the main bottlenecks, the main challenges you would see now?
You mean internal or external?
You may take both parts.
I think you can easily understand what they are. Economy is not doing that well, so and there is a lot of volatility on the financial markets. So of course we have lots of practical challenges in our work.
So stabilization.
Yes, we need, well, financial stability is stability of the market, both on kind of current for the future, right? So we see the risks which are happening right now, like kind of related to market instability of some institutions, particularly those who are connected in the system. We have to implement policy which try to take care of this risk. But an important task for financial stability is try to prevent building the risks. One thing, and second thing, accumulate buffers which you can use later on in order to face the risks, right? And for instance, in the last several years, we tried to, what it's called here, clean the banking system and financial system, right? So make our banking system stronger, have it more adequately capitalized, etc. And what I was directly responsible for, we built the so-called macroprudential regulation. Right, so the regulation which tried to prevent accumulation of systemic risks. And we were in particular concerned with the fact that consumer finance was growing very fast, and we thought that consumer may not fully understand what kind of risks they take on themselves. So at some point this bubble can burst. So we forced banking system to accumulate buffers, and now they can use this buffer to first of all stay stable themselves, and also to keep functioning, right? This is the first time in our recent history when we had some sort of a crisis, and when even consumer finance and credit to other sectors has not sort of compressed. We didn't have credit crunch, right? We see credit growing despite the difficult situation. Of course, it's also a result of other policies which were implemented, but buffers which were accumulated in the previous years, they definitely helped in this kind of situation.
Now, I mean, as a university director, I have to do and have the pleasure to deal with students and to try to support them, to develop them, to mentor them, and so on. Now, Ksenia, having such an impressive career path and now being in such a high function, what would you say? What brought you in such a role? What brought you? What supported? What was the key element to have such a career path?
Well, you know, I'm surprised myself that I ended up where I am right now, because I cannot tell you that I was born with the idea that I will become the deputy governor of the central bank, and I had a special strategy. But on the other hand, I always liked macroeconomics. And I liked even when I studied already, that was the issue which interested me a lot. Right, so because of that, I was prepared, and I also was very deeply interested in what I'm doing. And now when friends of mine sometimes start asking me whether I would like to do something else, and I'm telling them, you know, I'm in the perfect position. I'm doing what I'm very much interested in. I'm very passionate about my jobs, and it keeps challenging me, so it never gets boring. So and I think that it's important, right? I think it's maybe obvious that you need to do what you like to do, and only in this case you can accomplish a lot. But in my case, it's definitely worked. But on the other hand, of course, there was a number of, well, luck. Right, so I was lucky in some cases. Also, I was probably born in changing times, and I kind of use this possibility which changing times provide to you, because I was born in the Soviet Union, very different country, right? But then I was able to go to MIT, then I came back, and so on. So I guess I managed to use to my advantage some of the opportunities which existed in this time. But overall, I always try to do what's interesting for me.
I think it honors you a lot that you also involve the importance of you know, opportunities and even luck. On the other hand, one needs to be prepared and ready to take risks or to take decisions and to take opportunities. So I really like that you know, people who are modest and also see it in the larger and a more comprehensive picture and context. What is, if you have been mentioning before Christine Lagarde being in contact or in close relationship with your with the governor of the Bank of Russia. But what would you see is there a very close and systematic interaction also with other central banks, like whatever the Federal Reserve, the one in India, the one in Japan, and so on, or is it more spontaneously on occasion?
Well, central bankers, they have a network. We have Basel, Basel Bank, and this is sort of a think tank which works for central bank. And actually, every 2 months, they have a meeting. Well, it used to be in person. Now it's not exactly in person, but meeting for the governors, where they meet together and discuss various issues. But then there are all other networks, G20, Financial Stability Board. Financial Stability Board has a number of committees. If you think of other regulators, they all have some kind of international organizations of regulators. And so I think that central bankers and regulators meet a lot and have regular discussions with each other, and they usually know each other quite well. And there is a lot of exchange of experiences and views. And of course, this is what helps us. Right? When you do your policy, you'd rather know what other people do and try to learn on their experiences as well. And this experience is very easy to get. So it's very helpful that we have all these networks within which we cooperate.
Now, talking about experiences and networks and interaction, what would you see is what is your opinion on the present state of the Russian economy and the global economy?
Well, there is this joke, either about Yeltsin or about Gorbachev. So when either Yeltsin or Gorbachev was asked, what is the state of Russian economy in one word? He said, good. What is it in 2 words? And he said, not good. This is my view about the economy. Well, I will start with not good, right? Because obviously we had this big surprise this year. We had pandemic, we had lockdowns, we had disconnections, right, in different from different perspectives. And so economy, particularly in the second quarter, there was a significant decline in global economy almost everywhere, etc. And before that, we had a huge collapse on the global financial markets. What is good is that at least part of it is already over, right? Most of the economies to some extent recovered, financial markets stabilized, etc. But still looking forward, there are lots of difficulties and lots of risks, right? And which required a lot of attention from policymakers, starting with central banks. So we try to carefully assess different risks and plan our policy. And of course, what's also important for us is to weight short-term, medium-term, long-term consequences of our decisions, because what you do today may be positive for today, but a negative effect tomorrow may be more than you expected, and so on. So we have to carefully think about different consequences and balance our policies against different risks.
You somehow expressed that the Russian economy and also the global economy has been somewhat stabilizing after the pandemic, and also that there is certain risk, or still the risk is not over. But what would you really, it has the pandemic, the economic effect of the pandemic already, is it already visible in its comprehensive perspective, or do you really think, okay, now the biggest chunk has been behind us, or is behind us, and now let's try to recover and then move on?
Well, we take Russia, decline in the second quarter was 8%, right? Decline in GDP. I think, well, of course, everything can happen, but I don't think we will see additional decline like this. Well, right now we all see that the health situation is getting worse. Right, so I cannot say whether it's a second wave or it's not a second wave, but still no kind of strict measures, strict lockdowns are being planned or undertaken, but people and governments behave more cautiously because they try to control those health risks. So further recovery of the economy will be more slow. Effect on the demand will be bigger. Financial markets are getting worried, so there is more volatility, and so on. And there's surprises can still be ahead of us. And I'm not saying that we understand quite well how situation will develop. And the problem, of course, that the key problem is not economical. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to predict what will happen. We understand how economy will react to this non-economical risk, but we do not fully understand this non-economic risk. So it makes the situation more complex and difficult. But on the other hand, there will definitely be kind of long-lasting changes. And some of them probably negative, but other positive. I strongly believe that this kind of communication will survive the pandemic. And of course, we may like meeting in person more, but from different kind of angles, this kind of communication is very effective as well. And it also has benefits. Right, and not only that I'm sitting in Moscow, you're sitting on your campus and we talk to each other as if there is no difference between our, right? But also in terms of the number of people who can listen to us, because it is broadcasted. So if you broadcast it, you can have audience from basically all over the world who can listen to our conversation. So there are a lot of advantages of these new technologies which we started to explore. And I think that we will keep exploring them even after the pandemic. And again, there was this joke, right, a few months ago. Who is the leader of the digitalization of your company, right? And the options were like president, IT director, whatever, and COVID-19. And COVID-19 is definitely a leader of digitalization of our work.
I have another question which has been sent to us, and now the monetary system has been flooded with liquidity, and now how do you think can the liquidity be limited again, or when, and to what price? At what price can it be reduced? And try to not inflationize the monetary system too much.
Okay, first of all, Russian monetary system was not too much liquidity, but I understand that in Europe and in the US and in what we call advanced economies, I agree what is called QE, right? Quantitative easing became a major monetary policy instrument in the era of like zero, close to zero, even negative interest rate. And well, so far, those policies were tried already for about 10 years, more than 10 years, right? So they haven't realized in inflation, which is probably a big question. Why? But what worries me is probably something else, not only potentially inflationary effects. I guess if central banks will see inflationary effects, they know how to react to them. but also financial stability effects. We haven't yet figured out how to deal with them, because with how we interpreted the fact that central banks had to introduce QE as a policy instrument back in 2008, because there was a debt crisis. So in order to solve the debt crisis, central banks started QE. But QE led to more debt rather than less debt. So now we have to do bigger QE to solve the problem of bigger debt. So I'm a little bit worried about this kind of spiral of financial stability risks which we see, and I think we still need to figure out some kind of exit strategies of that.
Which is difficult, like if you are addicted to drugs, and actually, I mean, it has similarities to that, doesn't it?
Well, but I agree the solution will be a stronger regulation.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, I think that's the expected answer of a first deputy governor of the Bank of Russia, isn't it, or of any central bank?
Probably, yes.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you are right. Actually, how else could you do it? I mean, both of us as economists, we are in the wrong business presently. We should be we should be in the pharmaceutical business, or in the healthcare business, or wherever. But you know, things happen. We are not complaining, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah. What now? I keep receiving questions which I want to embed then, but let me briefly stick to the COVID crisis. Perhaps, how have you personally been coping with the challenges in the times of the pandemic? Were you affected at all? Families, your environment, or also your circumstances?
Well, I have some old relatives, so I'm trying to keep them safe outside of the city. So it's my big concern, right? How to keep them safe. But I'm on other things. Well, I try to do more sports on myself because we were limited on going to gym and things like this. So and then we move less, really physically. We do not move from room to room as much as they used to do. So, but I think that the crisis also for people like myself created some opportunities. For instance, I love opera. And now there's so many opera available online. Of course, I would love to go in person, but it's not available. But there's so much of brilliant operas available online, which you can watch. So there are some opportunities which, again, why it's opportunity for me, because it's it's what I enjoy, right? So it allows me to sort of concentrate on something else rather than COVID crisis and problem which it creates.
And allowing us to have a glass of wine with the opera, right?
Yes.
And now let me introduce some questions, and a question which just came in comes from George for Georg Singewald, who is a Tyrolean, and he's also a lecturer of the MCI. He lives in the Silicon Valley, and he has, I wonder how late it is, must be early in the morning. Anyhow, the question goes like, there is a minimal media coverage on the position and outlook of the cryptocurrency landscape and upcoming regulations in Russia. Could you elaborate on this a bit?
Well, Central Bank of Russia is an enemy of cryptocurrencies. We think that we are trying to introduce policies which sort of stimulate financial institutions to use new technologies, right? We would like to be technology friendly. But as far as cryptocurrency specifically are concerned, We see a lot of risks for the consumers and for the economy. For the consumers, they do not usually understand the risks, right? So it's complicated things. For the economy, well, every central bank, the task of every central bank at the end of the day is to make their own currency strong. And cryptocurrency is a kind of competition to our currency. So we need to make our currency strong, and it allows us that we have good currency to conduct this policy, which can stabilize economy, financial markets as well. So cryptocurrencies create risks for financial stability, may create economic risks, and this is also one of the reasons where we are not that fond of development of cryptocurrency. Not technologies. We think that technologies which are behind them can be very well used, and they may have lots of applications.
But if I may add a question from my side. Now, if I'm also a business major, not just an economist, or somehow in between. And as a business major, you would ask now, there is a saying, if you cannot beat someone, rather join someone. Or if you cannot keep a risk out, why not take it in and have it out of your, and rather than having it out of your influence, try to have it in your sphere of influence. Wouldn't you say that could be a strategy to actively create, invest into the system of cryptocurrencies and have it under your control?
No, there is something else, something what is called central bank digital currency.
Okay.
By definition, this is not cryptocurrency, because cryptocurrency is not central bank, it's actually nobody, okay. Right, etc. But digital payments, more generally, right, is of course an area which all central banks are exploring. Mm-hmm. Both from kind of theoretical and technological point of view. Mm-hmm. And of course, this is one of the areas where we look at and try to, first of all, try to understand all the technologies and reliability of these technologies, because if you want to, replace technology which you use with some new ones, central bank cannot afford to have non-reliable technology in payments. Mm-hmm. Right? We really need something very reliable. But also we look into various risks for financial stability, which can be generated even with CBDC, right? Because right now, public usually does not hold accounts in the central bank. Mm-hmm. And CBDC is basically people having accounts within the central bank. So it's changed the system, not only technological, but kind of substantial. Mm-hmm. Right? Then how we can do monetary policy in this new environment as well. So all these kind of issues which we study, because on the other hand, we understand that all this digital technologies develop, and central banks will certainly in the future will be doing something along this line. There's no other way for us, for sure. Mm-hmm.
But I think the clarification was important, that digital currency by the Central Bank of Russia, Bank of Russia, is not, in your perspective, not a cryptocurrency. That's a different story, which is clear, but important to make it clear to the audience and also to me. Now, I've been receiving 2 questions from a teaching and research assistant at the MCI. His name is Florian Blösel, and he has, I may start with the first one. Now, what do you, Ksenia, what do you think about the further development of the Russian economy from an investor's perspective?
Let me put it this way. As a central bank, mm-hmm. within our mandate, we try to make Russian economy attractive for investments. We introduced inflation targeting. So, well, if you know Russian history a little bit, of course, Russia had very high inflation in the 1990s. Then we had moderate inflation in afterwards. We had a number of crises. So right now, inflation is somewhat below 4% for the last 2 years, which is very low inflation for Russia. It's maybe very high inflation for Austria, but it's quite a low, historically, it's a low inflation for Russia. And we try to keep inflation under control. So we think that it's important for investments. And then we also, again, our mandate is to develop financial sector, different financial institutions, financial instruments. So we pay lots of attention to that. And of course, we pay a lot of attention to strength and stability of existing financial institutions. Well, we all know that investment climate more generally is a challenge for Russia. Let me put it this way. So we, from time to time, communicate this message to the government as well. But again, as far as our mandate is concerned, we really take this seriously, and we think that what we are doing from the macro and financial perspective should improve the climate for investment in Russia.
The second question Mr. Blösel has sent to me is, it's a bit longer, so I please apologize if I read it. Now, currently, Russia is hit by some European or EU sanctions, which could be a reason why investors avoid investments in Russian corporations, even though the prerequisites for attractive investment opportunities, such as high dividend yields and relatively low payout ratios for many stocks, are given. Are the sanctions and other reasons, for instance, ruble exchange rates, an unjustified reason for not investing in Russian stocks, or how would you see that?
Well, that's true. We have American and to some extent European sanctions already for a number of years. And of course, the limit, in fact, just a few companies have, well, not just a few public companies. Sanctions to the extent that they completely closed from the financial markets. Normally, they cannot issue new stocks and new bonds. But at the same time, many of the Russian companies are very popular with the foreign investors. Well, of course, right now we speak at the middle of the COVID, so investors more in the risk off mood in general, right? But otherwise, I don't know, like Sberbank, where I used to work, as you said, I think like maybe 90% of its free float is foreign. And so on. So I cannot say that as far as kind of market investors is concerned, our good companies was such a big problem. I would be more concerned with foreign direct investors, right? That we probably, for development of the economy, you need not only money. People tend to think that money is the only thing which you miss, but normally in life, when you think about it, money is often not the main thing which you need. You need skills,
productivity,
productivity, technology, knowledge of the markets, etc. You know, many other things in addition to money to be successful. Yes, so this is why I think that creating a better environment for indirect investments is an important topic. Well, at the same time, who knows? We live in times when I guess invest domestically is becoming a fashion and one country. So who knows how the global situation will develop.
Thank you so much, Ksenia. I have a professor, a faculty member of the MCI named Simon Cermak, and he has sent me quite a number of questions. I try, but they are brief, so I think we can go through them. How do you evaluate the actual monetary policy of the European Central Bank and the Federal Reserve? For instance, I mean that's more a political sensible question, but you may, you know, from the perspective of an expert, how would you see that?
Well, you know, it's not that good to kind of evaluate the policy of other central bank. We're trying to do what they have a mandate, right? Stabilization of economy and stabilization of inflation at the target, and financial stability and so on. And they're doing what they can in order to fulfill this target, right? As I said already, there are a number of kind of more longer-term risks which may be created within this policy. But probably the reason is not that this policy is so much incorrect. Probably we do or not do enough somewhere else, right? Like as we tend to say, we're not doing enough of structural reforms in order to improve productivity, because if productivity is low, interest rates are low. So central bank had to invent all this strange policy to support the economy. But if productivity were higher, probably interest rates were higher. And so central bank could have stayed within much more traditional mandate. So probably in order to solve this issue, we need to do more in terms of improving productivity.
May I add a question from my side? Now, you have been mentioning, I mean, the different goals of a central bank, but there is quite a different goal set of the Federal Reserve with respect to the European Central Bank. The European Central Bank, to keep it easy now, is more or less just to keep monetary stability, whereas the Federal Reserve, in addition, shall focus strongly on the progress, on the development of the economy. What would you see is I mean, to have the stronger restrictionary type of goal set of the European Central Bank, or the other one of the Federal Reserve? What would you recommend?
You know, from the point of economic theory, there is not that much difference.
In the long term, no.
Yes, because the European Central Bank. Think about European Central Bank. It has asymmetric target, right? It's 2 or below. It's not symmetric in other countries. This is an exemption. As far as employment is concerned, usually central banks thought about it that there is some kind of natural rate of employment, so they have to stabilize the economy around being close to this rate and inflation close to targeted inflation. And that's the same for ECB and for the US. My interpretation of what Americans have done right now is that because of changes in the labor market recently, what is called flattening of the Phillips curve, we do not know how low is natural rate of unemployment. And it's probably actually lower in the US than in Europe, right? In Europe, usually it's declined now, but I think it was higher for a number of years. So this is why they said we are no more trying to guess what's the natural rate. We just try to, for the time being, we try to maximize employment. But I think that if at some point, it's not the law, it's how they define the mandate for the time being, right? So they may rethink it later on, but right now,
Ksenia? Ksenia?
differently. Okay, because there was something with the picture. But on the other hand, I think as far as advanced economies are concerned, Europe or United States, everyone is just trying to signal that they will may allow higher than target inflation for some time, because Madame Lagarde also said something along these lines recently. Right, they do not want inflation expectations to go down. They want to signal that policy will be accommodative for a long enough period to create inflation and so on. So I think that there are differences, but I won't say that this is some really fundamental differences in policy approaches, and they tend to merge. One country invent one policy, others kind of either follow or do something along this line, maybe not exactly the same thing, and so on.
Now, coming from a more global perspective, again, back to Russia, our Professor Chermak asked me to ask you, how much do oil prices, which is a very relevant question for the Russian economy, how much do oil prices influence measures taken by the Bank of Russia? Especially oil prices, inflation, the price development of oil.
Okay, oil price definitely, since Russia is one of the biggest global oil producer, oil price is one of the major kind of conditions which influence Russian economy, Russian currency exchange, etc., everything. However, for the last few years, we have a new budget rule. Very strict budget rule. We had to relax it somewhat because of the pandemic, but generally speaking, it's very strict and very strong. And it basically says that there is a price of oil. Well, at the time when this law was first introduced in 2017, it was $40 per barrel. Now it's somewhat higher. Because of the some global inflation, it's like 42. But anyway,
and for other reasons, yeah.
Yes, for other reasons, not for the reasons of oil price. So there is this price, and basically, budget expenditure should be always planned as if oil price is whatever $42 per barrel. And extra revenues should be put into a stabilization fund. When price undershoot, we use this stabilization fund to finance the budget. But the budget should be independent on fluctuations of oil prices, right? Or budget spending. So what is, and of course, budget is not the whole economy, but in every country, it's a significant part of the economy, right? So it stabilizes expenses in the economy at some flat oil price. And because of that, economy in general become less dependent on oil price. So if you look on Russian exchange rates in the years after this budget rule was introduced, it's really became much less dependent on oil price than it used to be before. Of course, this year, because of the pandemic, of all other shock, we see a lot of fluctuation, but still they were relatively small in comparison of what you can expect when oil price falls below zero, right? For some for some time. So, and this budget rule, this strict budget policy, it's to a large extent isolates economy from oil price fluctuation and makes life of the central bank much easier.
not really quiet, but a bit, let's say, a bit calm, calmer than earlier. Now, I've been receiving a question from a student of an MCI student, and his name is Simon Feisenmeyer. And it's a longer question. This is why I read it now. I'm a student at the MCI. I run an Instagram channel to inform about investment opportunities. See how creative students we have? Now, from an investor's perspective, the Russian stock market has been a disappointment lately, especially due to the weakness of the ruble against the euro. Nevertheless, from an investor's point of view, there are exciting companies in Russia, exciting opportunities, such as Tinkoff Bank. Thanks, Simon, for the hint, yeah? Which is now also growing strongly in Germany with its fintech company. How do you see the development of the ruble against the euro and the development of the stock markets in general?
I would surprise you, student. We never comment on the forecast of the exchange rate at the central bank. Because there is a reason for that. When we move to inflation targeting, we try to sort of concentrate everybody on inflation rather than exchange rate. Domestic, of course, agent people and companies. So we think that exchange rate pass-through is not that important anymore, and so on. So they have to concentrate on inflation rather than on exchange rate. Exchange rate, it actually helps to isolate economy from some external shocks, right? So we need to allow it to fluctuate. It makes economy more stable in many cases, for instance, when oil price fluctuates. So I would not give a prediction, but I would say something else. We see this year a boom in investment on the stock market and bond market by Russian domestic investors. Well, the reason is probably typical for you. You would understand it easily because since we put inflation under control, interest rates are going down. So deposits are becoming less interesting and people explore other opportunities. And actually, exactly the fact that stock market was fall quite significantly much stimulated many people to invest in the stock market. So we have lots of interest among new Russian investors, newcomers to the stock market.
I think, I mean, for me as an economist, I think it was very interesting to hear how you see the importance and the role of fluctuating or of the exchange rate. Yeah? I never heard it that clearly from a decision maker in a, let's say, important function as you are. No, thank you very much. Now, I've been also getting in a question by a different faculty member of the MCI, and her name is, she's associate professor with us, Wei Manske Wang. She is of Chinese origin and asks, what's your opinion, Ksenia, about the current close economic relationship between Russia and China?
Well, what's my opinion? I think China is our major strategic partner.
More so than Europe?
Well, we are neighbors both to Europe and China. And in terms of exports and imports, Europe, particularly overall Europe, Germany specifically, is the largest part, but China is catching up quite fast, right? We should kind of admit this role of China, and I think that it's very important for us and maybe for everybody, but for us as a neighbor also in particular, to develop good relationships with China and develop economic relationships with China, political relationships with China, and so on. I think that I agree. It's one of our priorities.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Now, as we're getting closer towards the end of our interaction, I hope you have some more minutes time.
Yeah.
But I've been receiving quite a challenging question, perhaps for you. Now, again, from Professor Simon Cermak from the MCI. How difficult is it for a central banker to resist against influence from politics?
Well, of course, you have to fight for your independence all the time, right? And persuade both politicians, not only market, not only public, but also politicians. You need to communicate with them and explain what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But having official mandate is also helpful, right? We are independent by constitution. Mm-hmm. So we use this mandate as well in our communication. It may get easy if you are successful. Mm-hmm. Sure. You know, when we start saying that we go for inflation targeting, so inflation will be lower, and nobody believed this, and it was a little bit more challenging than now when inflation is indeed lower for a few years. So people at least, and politicians as well, at least they understand that this is possible, and they also start to enjoy some positive consequences of that as well. But that's not, it's a process. You have to invest in that.
I hope you are not asking me in return, how do you deal with this issue as a rector or as a faculty member? No? So we may do this over a glass of wine when we get to meet in person. Now, let me come closer to the end and perhaps ask some more personal issues. Now, the one is, interpersonal and your personal approach to certain issues. Now, do you work, Ksenia, or also the Central Bank of Russia, do you work with academic institutions systematically?
Well, I can't say that we work systematically, but we work with academic institutions. For instance, I've already mentioned this program of establishing research in the regions. Mm-hmm. And education, economic education in the region is not as good as in Moscow. So we need to educate our staff in the region more, and we collaborate with major Moscow universities. We have actually online education program for our staff. And we also tell them that it would be good if we try to invite local lecturers from the universities, people who teach macroeconomics, other relevant issues, because we would like more generally the level of education to be higher, right, in the region as well. So we think that it will not cost us much if they participate in the online course. But if it leads to some improvements, it's a good externality of what we can do. And then, of course, our researchers, they have research seminars, they speak to local researchers and so on.
If I may add on this issue. Now, if you do you think alumni may have it now focus on Russia or also on a more general level? Do you think alumni coming out of universities are prepared well? Thoroughly enough, or into the right direction? You know, there's wisdom and experience and competences and whatever you may put into such a bowl. and whatever you may expect from the side of an employer now?
Again, in Moscow, I think that we probably do not hire that much, so we are able to select very good people. And we also have this problem of interns, right? So we invite interns from the universities, introduce them to our work, then screen them as well. So they do this kind of things with the universities. But it depends, first of all, in different areas, you may see different qualifications of alumni. Well, also, I think employers, in some specific tools, employers need to train their staff. Right? There is no way somebody like a university will train them. Moreover, it's probably not good. I think that the universities still have to give more general education for people to understand some broader things, right? To be able to apply these skills in different areas, because otherwise we will probably limit their future opportunities too much. But as I said, we need to educate our staff in the regions more and so on. And as far as economics is concerned, on the other hand, we sometimes teach lectures. We now think about, writing a course on whatever central banking and maybe putting it on Coursera and somewhere else to improve knowledge and education. Not necessarily of economic students, of everyone who's interested in this topic.
Why Coursera and not the MCI? Now, but perhaps from my point, the last or one of the last questions now, you in a leadership position or throughout your career, what would you say are some mistakes you've made, which you may talk about in order to advise others to avoid that may be different decisions you would like to do differently now, or also habits or attitudes, or out of a leadership perspective?
Well, speaking of my own mistakes, I think I underappreciated how important communications are, right? So you need to communicate, and as a central banker, you need to, even if you do something which you think others would not understand, nowadays, you need to find a way how to communicate it. Then, well, I can't say that I did very strong mistakes about hiring some people, but I had some turnover as far as people are concerned. More generally, what a mistake which I'm afraid of making, right? And I think which is a big problem for many leaders is that when you start thinking, "Oh, I'm so smart, I never do mistakes, I'm always right," that means that you're close to the end, right? You always need to question yourself whether you are right, what can go different, etc. And what I try to do, I really like to work with people who are very capable, who know what they're doing, who can challenge you to some extent, and who can work independently. I do not like telling people what to do and controlling them all the time and not give them space. I like people who work independently. And well, of course, I challenge them, I talk to them, etc. But still, I would like them to work independently. And I also, as I said, I like what I do. I kind of do basically driven not by KPI, but more like by mission. And I like people who are driven not by KPI, but by mission and who do things like this. And I think that this is important. This is also some part of the success, because we cannot do everything by ourselves. We have to rely on good people in our work to achieve results.
I think one couldn't have made a better final statement than trying to have people around oneself being feeling the mission rather than KPI, and be attracted by mission than by KPI. Thank you so much to the first deputy governor of the Bank of Russia, to Ms. Ksenia Yudaeva. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your experience, your thoughts. You're giving insight in your policies and your way of thinking. Thank you so much out there in wherever you may be now in the world, following us through this live talk. I hope you have been enjoying it as much as I did. I hope you will stay healthy and safe wherever you are, and that the economy will prosper again and stabilize and prosper, move on. And let me again mention the next meeting, our live talk, which will be a face-to-face format on campus, the chief executive of HOFA, next Friday.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure for me, and I really enjoy the conversation. And it's often, very enjoyable to understand that issues which people in Russia or Austria or China or everywhere are concerned with, they are quite similar, So it's always good to, within this talk, to understand that we have common challenges, common solutions, and often very similar views. Thank you. And
thank you so much.
Stay healthy, and I hope that the weather will be as good as I can see it from your window. And with this bright weather, we will have good mood and good health, and we will be happy enough, and we will move to a situation when economy and everything else will be better than right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ksenia, and welcome to Austria. We would be more than pleased to have you on campus also in presence. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.